Welcome, all pregnant families, midwives or birth workers. This is Tracy Anderson Askew, your host for the Transform Your Birth podcast, changing your mind about birth one story at a time. Each week we will be exploring a birth story through the lens of what birth can teach us. I'll be digging deep into each story so you can learn what it is that can change the way a birth unfolds. We can't control birth, but we can influence it. So listen in to find out how. Enjoy. Emily and Brad join us today to share the story of Isabelle's arrival. We often don't expect first births to be quick, and yet it can happen. Quick births are often intense, and pushing out a baby who is face up can also be difficult. Emily, with the help of Brad, managed it beautifully, as she had learnt to trust her body and relax deeply. Emily shares her advice that your body knows what to do, just trust it. Another great episode to help us all learn to respect the birth process. Enjoy.
Before we begin, a note from our sponsor. This episode has been brought to you by Transform Parenting, an organisation that provides courses, coaching and community from pregnancy through to the first 7 years of a child's life. Most of the stories you will hear through this podcast are graduates of the Transform Your Birth workshop held in Canberra. Our Transform Your Birth Today course is now available to anyone, anywhere, at any time, and includes all the wonderful wisdom of this course and live weekly catch-ups when you need it with our host, Tracy. For a little taste, please accept our pregnancy gift offer, which contains free the first few lessons and some essential wisdom for pregnancy. The link can be found in these show notes or visit transformyourbirth.com.au. And now for the episode.
Oh, hello, everyone. I've got with me today lovely Emily and Brad and little Izzy. So if you're watching this, you're going to see this gorgeous little girl who's 5 months old. Thank you to your family for coming on and sharing your story with us. Thanks for coming.
That's all right.
Yeah, good to see you. Now, Emily, you were pregnant with Izzy. How were you feeling about your pregnancy and what sort of preparation did you do?
Well, when first pregnant, I'd sort of had the idea previously, like I didn't know a lot of pregnant people, I suppose, before having her. Like there was a couple, but I suppose I wasn't very involved in what the whole process was. I'd only heard from my mum who said, oh, you were both big babies, so I had C-sections. So I sort of had the idea that, okay, big baby, C-section, that's the easy way out. It's sort of what I had in my head, which obviously after a bit of education, I now know is not quite the case.
No, it's not an easy option.
No, absolutely not. So I sort of was like, oh, just cut it out of me. We'll be fine. Let's go. And then I sort of, looked into it a bit more, realized that was obviously not the case and was like, okay, I would prefer to, give birth vaginally, and the thought of that terrified me. So I did a bit of looking into what other people did to sort of help them get past that. And a big one that kept popping up was your course. So I did that when I was about 33, 34 weeks pregnant, I think.
Mm-hmm.
That was a big game changer for me in terms of how I felt about it. Like it went from being something I was terrified of to something that I'm like, okay, I can do this. I can get through this. It'll be okay.
So when you reflect on that process of change, you came in feeling, okay, I've got to do this, and a little bit terrified by the idea of giving birth. What was it that you learned that helped shift your feeling and mindset around the prospect of being able to give birth?
I think a big part of it was the way in the course we looked at why people are scared of birth and how birth is portrayed to us in a lot of through the media and just through culture. Like, when you talk to people, all you see in the media is women on their backs, legs up, in pain, screaming, having the worst experience of their life. And, when you talk to people and talk to friends, all they want to tell you is the negative parts about it. Yeah. And so you sort of had that in your head, drilled in, so that when it comes time for you to do it yourself, you're like, this is not good. This is not good. I'm going to go through this awful thing. And I guess sort of having the education to undo that a little bit, even just things like what you were saying about where the blood flow is going when you're in that fight or flight response, being when all you have in your head is I'm going through this awful thing, terrible pain. But, you go into that fight or flight, your blood goes out and it turns everything around a bit.
Yeah.
But when you sort of relax and, work through it and be calm and, be present, the blood goes where it should be going, and it makes things often go that bit smoother. So I think having that changed in my head was a big help.
So what Emily's describing there is the difference between the stress response and the deep relaxation response. When women are deeply relaxed in labour, the blood goes where it needs to be, which is with the uterus, because the uterus is contracting. The uterus is the most powerful muscle in the human body to push out a baby. It's the biggest job a muscle will ever do. And so in order to do that, it needs lots of blood and oxygen. But when we go into stress, when we go into fight flight, the blood goes away from the core, which is where most of our blood is now, into our arms and legs, because we're sending signals to our body that we need to fight or get the hell out of there. And in doing that, that rediversion of blood changes things dramatically. Not only that, you're then releasing the stress hormones like adrenaline, which counteracts oxytocin. Oxytocin is a feel-good hormone. It's also the fuel of labour. So when we go into stress, we actually make labour harder and more painful. And that knowledge alone can be very powerful in helping people to go, oh, no wonder we hear all of these sorts of horrible stories of how painful labour can be. By optimising the body's response and optimising the hormone release, it makes labour more manageable. So that obviously did its work on your mindset. You started to feel a bit different after that.
Yeah, 100%. And I think, like, in my head, I'm typically quite a logical person. So that just made sense to me. I'm like, oh, okay, yes.
Yeah, exactly. It's not a big stretch of the imagination to land on there. It's not life according to Tracy. It's not my opinion. It's just how the system works. That's excellent. Brad, you did the course as well. How did you find it, and what were the things that shifted your thinking?
There were a couple of things, particularly kind of sort of being on the bus. Once you're on the bus, you kind of can't get off the bus, kind of thing. The logic of it did help. I think what was the most illuminating, I guess, was sort of the effect that the course had on other people. So I do know that, of course, yeah, you're pregnant, your first birth, it's probably quite a stressful thing. You're expecting a lot of pain, as Emily said, from sort of the social pressure of it.
Yeah.
But that, like, the video of the lady that was in the car accident and the other lady that she'd had two really horrendous births the first couple times.
Yeah.
And the third birth, she'd really just flipped on it and like had the best experience she's ever had, or you know, for her mind, the best experience she'd ever had. And so those couple stories was like, all right, now there's certainly a possibility for this to go well. It doesn't have to be the horrendous image that, you know, we've kind of had painted for us.
Yeah.
For me, that was very comforting, because it was like, all right, you know, Emily is going to make it, you know, we're on the bus, it'll park eventually. But yeah, that was certainly a big kind of a burden. You're kind of sort of sitting here like, oh, what is it? The reserve quarterback kind of thing, just waiting for your opportunity. I not really called upon yet. So it's good to know that Emily was able to do it, I suppose.
Yeah, that's good. And then, of course, you got a very clear role in birth of what to do and what not to do.
Yes, that was.
Did you like that checklist, Brad?
A very good checklist. Yes, with M's story, you'll probably hear in a bit. There wasn't a lot of opportunity to get through a lot of that list, honestly.
So not much time to mess it up then.
No, not very much at all.
Oh, I'm looking forward to hearing this story. So that's good. Yeah, it's so important we start to shift our perception about birth, because the way you think about birth is going to influence how your body responds to birth. That's the power of the mind-body connection. And we don't tend to think about the role of the mind in childbirth. And yet, to me, it's everything. In fact, good midwives will tell you that birth is not a physical challenge, it is a mental one. And you've got to get your head in the right space. But it's not easy when you're surrounded by people, you know, giving you all their opinions about what you should or shouldn't do. That noise gets in the way of us really being able to cultivate the belief. So you did the course. How'd you go with the practices, Em?
Really good. I was pretty lucky in terms of my last few weeks. Like, while I was still working, I was working from home. So I'd have my lunch breaks, you know, I'd have an hour lunch break where I could sort of I'd eat my lunch and then I'd go do the practices and have a nap. So I sort of did them at least once a day, but it got to the point where they'd make me relax so much I fell asleep every time. So
not good for your productivity. They did their job. That's good.
They definitely relaxed me. And
Yeah, it's the purpose of them is to help you to go into deeper and deeper states of relaxation. And a lot of us need that because we're wired, we're used to being out and about and on the go and continually stimulated. So accessing that deep relaxation response in labor is more important than ever before. So, and it also brainwashes you into believing in yourself. It's cleaning out all the old beliefs and replacing them with good ones. So you felt like you'd go to sleep, which is not a bad response to relaxation.
Yeah, and not quite related to my birth and labor and whatnot, but even after she was born, I'd still go to them and use them just as a, to help go back to that relaxed state. So they definitely serve their purpose.
Yeah, I hear a lot of people say that they use them afterwards as well. So tell us about the day. How did it unfold?
So I woke up about 3:30 in the morning on the Sunday, and it was quite intense. I definitely knew it was contractions, like there was no doubt in my mind.
Okay.
And so I sort of waited it out on the couch for about an hour, and then I went and woke Brad up and said, "Hey, this is happening." Like, and because of everything I'd heard about, first labor is typically quite long, I sort of said to him, you go back to bed. I just want you to be aware that it's happening. You go back, get some sleep, and I'll wake you up when we're ready. And he was like, no, I'm going to stay up now. Because he could tell that, I was in.
Oh, Brad.
Yeah, I was fairly far along. So we sort of waited it out. We did call the hospital and they said, see how you go, give us a call in about an hour, because there was a bit of blood at that point. And they said, just see how you go for an hour, give us a call then. And so we called him back after an hour, still feeling quite intense. I was like, geez, if I'm only an hour or so in, how am I going to be going in, 10 hours time of this? This is a long time to be feeling like this. And so, yeah, after that hour, we did go to the hospital. So by that point, it was about 6:30 when we got there. And, walking through, so it's Bruce Hospital. So we walked through the emergency. I had to stop to go to the bathroom. I was like, I can't get up to maternity just yet. And I got in there and felt the need to push. And I was like, wow, this is too soon. This should not be happening yet. Like, what is going on? And so Brad went up to maternity, got the midwives. They came back with a wheelchair and brought me up to the maternity unit. They did do a check at that point and said, yeah, you're 10 centimeters, like you're ready to go. So about an hour later, Isabelle was here.
That's really interesting. It is one of the things that we assume with first-time mothers, because your body's not done it before. It can take a lot of work to thin out and open the door to let the baby out. Now, it sounds like your labor was, what is that, 4 hours?
It was 4 hours, yeah.
4 hours. And people often say, oh, I hope my labor isn't too long. 4 hours, that sounds wonderful. No, 4 hours, particularly for a first-time birth like that, can be very, very intense, and it can be very difficult to feel like you're able to work with the intensity of the sensations. But before I go, I want to know a little bit about how you manage that. Can I just ask, prior to you waking up with contractions that were quite strong, were you aware of any twinges or anything the previous day or even before you went to bed at night?
Not in terms of, I don't recall having any Braxton Hicks contractions or anything.
Right.
Did lose the mucus plug, which is what sort of gave it away. That was like, okay, this will be happening within the next, I think that was the Friday, and then Sunday is when she was born.
Yeah.
And it's kind of funny because I had in my head a checklist of things that I wanted done before she was born.
Yeah.
And I think I'd finished that checklist maybe a couple days before.
Right.
And so in my head, I was like, okay, I'm done now. She can come anytime.
I'm ready. So there's a part of you that was very ready for her. The mucus plug is a sign that the cervix is ripening. So as the cervix gets softer and starts to separate, the mucus that builds up over the pregnancy can come away. That's often a sign labor's, you're ripening and you're getting ready for labor. It can still be 24, 48, even longer, 48 hours away. It sounded like you'd had that sign. So there was definitely stuff going on, but you weren't aware of any sort of twinges or Braxton Hicks or anything like that.
No, I don't think so.
Interesting. Yeah, it's different for every woman. You just never know what's going to unfold on the day. So in that time of that 4 hours, what were you doing with your mind? What sort of tools did you use?
So I did use a TENS machine.
Okay.
So I pretty much got that set up at home quite early on. Like pretty much not, I don't know if it was when you got up or did I already have it on?
A little while after you were trying to set it up. And then,
Yeah, I think that might be why I woke Brad up to help get that set up.
Right.
And like
How
in
did
all
that
honesty,
work for you?
pardon?
How did that work for you, the TENS machine?
Yeah, I don't know how much it really did, like if it helped or not, but like it gave me something to focus on, I guess, like to think about, okay, there's a contraction happening. I'm going to press the button. Like it gave me one job to think about. And in my head, I was like, I'm pressing the button, therefore it's going to be better. It's going to help.
Yeah.
And, you know, when you're in that sort of state where you're not thinking about much, it gave me that one point of, you know, I've got to think about this. This is going to help.
Yeah. Yeah.
So maybe it did, maybe it didn't. I don't know, but you know,
Yeah.
I'd use one again.
Yeah. Yeah. Anything that focuses the mind can be very helpful. Were there other things you were doing with your mind, Em?
Not really. Like because it was so intense so quickly, like it was really just writing it out. Like when those contractions came, it was just like, just get through it really.
Yeah, really expecting sort of that early labor, almost kind of a slow build up, but coming out, Em was nearly doubled over with each contraction that was coming along. It was pretty rapid too. It was like, oh, okay, this isn't by the book, you know. So we're kind of just figuring out what was happening. We weren't thinking, okay, we're at, you know, what is it? Active labor at the moment. This is what we should be doing. This is next.
Yeah.
It was kind of what's happening. Where do we go from here? And the hospital's like, oh, they're not expecting us for another, 12 hours, but we're going to be there in half an hour, and Izzy's going to be there in an hour and a half, you know. So it was kind of more grappling with what we were dealing with, I guess, rather than.
Yeah, because like I was prepared for, you know, all the long early labor stuff. You know, I'd you know how you talk about do joy, like, you know, do some baking or go for a walk or something. I brought a Lego set because I like building Lego. I was like, this is going to be labor Lego. You know, I'm going to have it to focus on when I'm in those early stages where, you know, I can feel contractions, but it's nothing crazy yet. Nah, didn't get a chance to do the Lego. I still haven't done the Lego.
You're not likely to. It'll be Izzy who'll be doing the Lego.
Yeah, give it 18 years, I might get a chance to do it.
Yeah, and even in the hospital, Emily printed off a few images of sort of happy places, to sort of escape your mind to. She wanted candles, wanted music, none of that got stuff. We had no time. Yeah, so a lot of those, which Emily had been prepared for, had everything lined up, ready to go, and then couldn't use it. We didn't get the opportunity to, unfortunately.
Even the hospital, we said to the hospital that we wanted the bath set up. And by the time we got there, we didn't even get the bath set up in time. Like they had it running when we got there and they're like, yeah, like, sorry.
Isabelle was here in the bathroom before.
Yeah.
So that's a really intense experience. Tell us a bit about how that then translated when she landed. I'd like to go back to pushing, so we will talk about that, but tell us about that when she landed, because sometimes women who go through really intense births like that can be absolutely reeling when baby lands. What was that?
Yeah, like when they put her on my chest, honestly, I barely even remember it. Like it was sort of just a whirlwind of, oh, okay, cool. Like she's here now. Like, and so I got to spend a couple of hours with her, and like, you know, Brad was there as well. And then I did get taken down for surgery for some stitches. So waking up from that and then back up into the room, it all felt a bit surreal because it was so quick. Like by the time I got back up there, I was like, what just happened? Like, this is a bit crazy.
Yeah. And so how did that impact your bonding then? Like, when did you start to really connect in with Isabelle?
Probably not for a couple of weeks, in all honesty, like, which is, at first it was a bit hard for me to say that and admit that, but I've sort of come to the point now, it's like, no, that was really intense. Like it's hard to expect someone to immediately bond with this tiny person they've never met before after going through something like that. So, you know, after those couple of weeks, I absolutely adore her. She's, you know, would do absolutely anything for her. But those first couple of weeks were like, yeah, the bonding probably wasn't there straight away as much as I thought it probably would be.
Thank you for being honest about that. I think it's really important we can be honest, because people can go in with ideas that, oh, it's going to be instant, and they hear stories about people's bonding experiences, but it's very different. Every time you have a child, it's very different. And the intensity of a labour like that can absolutely leave your whole system, your nervous system, your body, the adjustments, the hormones. There's so much going on. It can take a while for your psyche to sort of catch on to where you are and to kind of land. So, but bonding is a very powerful biological necessity. So don't ever underestimate it, but it can take, I've heard women talk about it in days, weeks, and even months. Yeah, but if it does, if you do struggle to bond, it's worth, really exploring that and getting a little bit of extra help after, a good couple of months if it hasn't happened. But yeah, that's really interesting. So tell us about that pushing phase then. What was that like? Because that sounded fairly quick too.
Yeah, so initially, I got into the hospital, they checked, they said, yep, you're 10 centimeters, you can start pushing. I had a lovely midwife. She was absolutely beautiful, and was, sort of talking to me between pushes. And I do remember at one point saying to me, she's like, what do you think you're having? Because I didn't know at that point. Brad knew, but I didn't. What do you think you're having? And I remember saying to her, a girl. And so obviously there was a bit of time between pushing. Isabelle she was sunny side up, so the pushing was not ideal. Like, she was head down, but she wasn't quite as optimal as she could have been. Yeah. So it was quite tough pushing. And as we sort of got towards the end, they were doing, the monitoring, making sure she was okay. And her heart rate did start decreasing a bit. So they were looking at having to do an episiotomy. And when I saw them get those tools out, that's when I was like, okay, we're pushing, like she's coming out now. I do not want that happening. Yeah. And I think that gave me the last sort of bit of energy that I needed to push her out. And yeah, so out she came. She was fine, put her on my chest. She cried a little bit and then stopped. She was fine. And I think I do wonder if the fact that I pushed so hard for that last little bit is what possibly caused some of the tearing, but yeah, who knows? It could have happened regardless.
Yeah. Did she come out sunny side up, face up?
Yeah.
She did. Well done. It's harder to push out a baby that's sunny side up, but obviously your body was saying, no, she's coming. She's adjusting to that. It can take a while because the head doesn't push on the cervix as optimally, and then of course down on the perineum, it has to, the surface area is a little bit larger typically with sunny side up babies. So that's why that can happen. Now, when you did tear, did you feel it?
No, like everything there was so much sensation and happening that I couldn't pinpoint which was what. So yeah, no, nothing stands out to me as, oh, that's when I tore. No, it was just all one big feeling.
Yeah. And can be reassuring for women who obviously worry about tearing or episiotomies. It's very rare women feel it because there's such bigger stuff going on at the time.
Yeah.
Brad, what was that like for you in that pushing phase and then when she landed? Tell us about your experience.
Well, I must admit, so when we arrived at the hospital, Emily was already pretty tired. She'd kind of been dealing with, probably was active labour from about 3:30 in the morning, I guess. Yeah. So probably already pretty tired when she arrived at the hospital. And then with sort of the, like, getting into sort of the birthing suite, the the midwives and nurses and stuff, sort of, giving their introductions and getting information, figuring out where things are. Emily was also still battling with the contractions, and she was knackered, honestly, with probably about a half an hour to go. Like, I think started on her stomach and was, shaking, like just fatigue is what that was. And then had to move to her side to get through it. For me, could see Emily was doing well. It was sort of when they had the heart rate monitor on Isabelle. That was when it started to drop, was kind of like, oh no, something's gone wrong, something's happened. Because I think I remember seeing Isabelle's head kind of just starting to nudge out, get sucked back up, poking out, sucking back up. Yeah. It was like, so close, it's right there. Obviously, kind of unaware of what was involved, because it was only sort of the top fifth of her head I was seeing. I was like, that's nothing, just, spit that out, that'd be fine.
He says confidently.
So, and very clearly with Emily, because the contractions, it probably was only like 20 seconds between each contraction. So being very clear and deliberate, Emily, get some breaths in, here's some water. We're going again, I think helped Emily a lot to sort of build up and be like, all right, big push, and then rest, and then go again, push, rest. Did help her, but yeah, when Isabelle's heart rate dropped, it was kind of like, oh no, we're gonna need some more external help here, kind of thing. Just because it was like, Emily's exhausted. Isabelle's kind of been just right there for probably half an hour.
Yeah.
It was like,
were you aware of that, Em? Were you
That
aware
she was
the
just
heart rate?
there, or
No, the heart rate dropping.
yeah, they did tell me. Yeah.
So they were concerned about that.
they did have a little heart rate monitor right next to Em's head as well.
Oh, I wouldn't have seen that. I had no idea what that was.
Yeah, she was totally in it. What sort of impact did having Brad there have on you, Em?
Oh, I don't know how I would have done it without him there.
Mm.
He was brilliant. Like, it's kind of funny. Like when I was in my, getting ready for labor and whatnot. So I used to do competitive martial arts, and a kind of, I know it sounds silly, but like a lot of similarities between the two, like in terms of prep. So, you can do everything you can to get prepared, but you don't know what's going to happen on the day, kind of thing. And like having a corner person when a competition, and having a good corner person can make all the difference. Brad was my corner person. He made all the difference.
Wow.
And so even just, the reminders of, okay, breathe now, because, when contractions ended, like I'm in such a heightened state of everything that I'm not thinking about that, but just that reminder in my ear of, okay, breathe. Okay, here's your water. Like just holding it there ready for me. Obviously not a bottle, but
yeah.
And the fact I didn't have to think at all. He did the thinking.
Yeah.
Which meant I could focus on what I needed to focus on. So I think that load that I didn't have to bear was the biggest help it could have been.
I love hearing that. It's really, it's like the birth sits on both of your shoulders, not just on the birthing mothers. And when partners realise what an important role they can play, and it's a very practical role, but it's also a very emotionally supportive role, which is essential, then women can just focus on what they're supposed to be doing without worrying about, why is a midwife doing that, and am I doing a good job? And they can be pulled out of the zone if they don't have somebody that's there covering that side of things, which is wonderful. Yeah.
Couldn't have asked any more of him.
Yeah. Brad, what was your bonding like? Tell us a little bit about that with Isabelle.
Oh, probably the same as Emily. I was pretty fortunate. I think I had 3 weeks off of work, so I was there the whole time.
Right.
Did have a few challenges around breastfeeding, and sort of things like that, which again tired as well. So probably a couple of weeks to sort of pick onto Isabelle and kind of be like, oh, you're a familiar, friendly face kind of thing.
Yeah. So it took you a couple of weeks to really land too.
Yeah.
Interesting. That's good. Yeah, it's very different for everyone, and there's no right or wrong. We've all got a path to walk and to welcome these babies. But boy, when they land in your heart, that's it. They're there for life. It's a life sentence. So looking back at your experience, is there anything, Emily, you'd like to share that that you would be useful to a pregnant woman? What would you share about your experience?
Aside from doing your course, because that's a big help, I suppose trusting that your body will do what it needs to do. You might not know in your head what to do, but your body is designed to know. It will do it, and if it, for whatever reason, doesn't, that's what the doctors and the midwives are there for. They are that extra help. They're on hand if you need it. But overall, your body knows what it needs to do.
Yeah.
And just have that faith in yourself.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Well said. Brad, is there any advice you'd give to pregnant families?
Preparation is great. I think the best advice I've received is actually from a friend of mine, Tonks. He said you're what is it? Prepared but completely unprepared. So everything you can handle, but you sort of need to figure out how to handle it, I guess.
Yeah.
So even now, like when she's crying, it's one of 4 or 5 things typically you just need to figure out which one it is. And before you figure it out, you've got no idea what to do. But once you do figure it out, you're pretty smooth sailing. So again, probably just backing yourself in, kind of what Emily said is a big one. You know, you will be able to handle it. You just kind of need to figure out what you need to handle.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Well, your story is a great example of don't have expectations about the length of birth. Don't have expectations about whether women can push out a posterior labour or not, baby or not. You did, and it was your first baby, the first time your body had ever given birth, and you pushed out a sunny side up baby. Don't underestimate the power of teamwork in the space of birth, because when women are well supported, they labour very well. They can stay in the zone and travel that path of least resistance. And also another great story around the uniqueness of bonding, how it can take a while for that baby and the whole experience to land in your system. Don't ever judge yourself for that. Each person has to find their way through that, and it is such an intense experience. It's the birth of a mother and a father and the cracking of the shell, and so Mother Nature wants you to experience it as an intense experience, so you'll never forget it and never not appreciate the value of what it is that you're doing in welcoming a new baby into the world. So it was a wonderful story with lots of great wisdom, and I want to thank everybody for listening again this week, and we'll have some more goodness for you next week. Bye for now. We hope you enjoyed this episode. Please subscribe and share this podcast. This episode has been brought to you by Transform Parenting, an organisation that provides courses, coaching and community from pregnancy through to the first 7 years of a child's life. It is a place where you can learn, get support and grow into your role as a parent. Why not take advantage of a special gift for all pregnant women at transformyourbirth.com.au. Or if you have children, we have a gift for parents also.